Good morning, guys. We're going over the second main body paragraph today. And with it come the usage of three more documents, the last three documents within this DBQ. Now, remember, these documents, for whatever reason, just fell into place and were in chronological order and kind of just made sense to put them as in document or in paragraph 1, document 1 and 2, and then 3, 4, and 5, and the second body paragraph. That typically doesn't happen. In this case, it did. So just remember, you typically wouldn't want to go through listing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in this DBQ. But again, it did fit in with this argument, fit into mine. So my main argument is that, yes, tariffs were influential in causing the tensions between the British and the Americans leading up to the revolution. However, it was the British presence in soldiers and the intrusive policies that they would use, things like the Quartering Act, but two, obviously, the loss of freedom, specifically that of government control, that really pushed Americans over the edge and down the road to revolution. So anyway, I'm going to go through my paragraph in detail now. Read it to you. Remember, everything's color coded too, so you can see it as far as the structure goes. The key is near the bottom, so you'll know exactly what I'm on as I'm talking through it. But compare this to your own. So you guys wrote a paragraph yesterday. Compare this to your own, and you try to figure out kind of where you can make those changes. Today, I want you to answer in a Google form what changes you would make. Now, you don't have to go on and on here. I just want you to look at where you were deficient and how you would change that ultimately in the end when comparing my essay to yours. Okay, remember, they're not looking for perfection, guys. They're looking for you to use these documents in an argument. And if you can do that, you're going to do well. All right. So without further ado, here we go. All right, guys. So I led off again just with this transition sentence. The buildup of British soldiers in the American colonies led to a deluge of tension that spilled out into the event known as the Boston Massacre. So I'm leading into my first document, the Boston Massacre here. The colonists, namely the Sons of Liberty, used this incident in a way to incite anger amongst the colonists and embolden the revolutionary cause amongst the colonies. Paul Revere's engraving titled The Bloody Massacre was a depiction that made the Bostonians look completely innocent and caught unaware by the British soldiers firing on them. So here I'm using this and incorporating this into my argument. Remember the argument that rising tensions was leading again Americans down this path, but in this case too, you have propaganda that's going to be distributed by the Sons of Liberty, showing that this wasn't a riot where the British soldiers fired upon the Bostonians who were rioting. It was, Bostonians basically just standing there peacefully. In the middle, you even see a woman praying, dressed in all black at a funeral, in a sense that these people were not unruly in any way whatsoever, which is not true. Remember, clubs and rocks and snowballs were being thrown at these soldiers as they're screaming at them, daring them to fire their weapons. Now, this is where I get into my next sentence is where I'm going to use my first happy statement. Okay. And this is what it is. It was distributed throughout the colonies with the purpose of garnering support from the middle and southern colonies. It worked masterfully as support for the revolution boomed shortly after its distribution in 1770. So not only am I saying its purpose, but I'm also saying the effect, what happened because of this. That's important too. My next sentence is just a transition sentence. Tensions would continue to increase between the soldiers and the colonists in the Boston area as fights and skirmishes would break out between the two quite readily. This culminated in a fight between the Minutemen of Concord and Lexington and British soldiers brought in to get rid of their munitions stockpile. So here's my introduction to my fourth document, document 4. And this is where I get into kind of tying it into my argument. This was the Battle of Lexington and Concord and what would become known as the shot heard around the world. It was the first bloodshed on a battlefield between the two sides. So this starts to bring increased tensions because these two clash on this battlefield. And as word spreads not only around the Boston area, ultimately around the colonies, people know that now is the time of revolution. And so I put it in here with historical context in my next line, because it's important for this one to kind of see that guys, as far as this incident goes, the whole world recognizes now that there's no going back. There's no undoing what has been done at Lexington and Concord. So this is what I have here. This battle would signal not only to the Americans and the British that war was at hand, but also to the rest of the world that America was going to attempt to achieve sovereignty once and for all. As America moved towards revolution after the Battle of Lexington in 1774, they would put together a group of leaders from each colony that would help to organize and formally announce their independence to the world. Here's my fifth document usage here. The Second Continental Congress would state many violations they felt the king had made against them and the American people in what was titled the Declaration of Independence. That's my fifth document right there, document 5. A majority of complaints that they made were in regards to the loss of liberty through the lack of government control, but more prevalent was the notion that British soldiers were extremely intrusive in their everyday lives. So there's, again, tying that into my argument, the building tensions, that it was soldiers' presence and intrusive actions that really led to the revolution. And here is my outside piece of evidence, my second outside piece of evidence. And I had other ones actually layered into this paragraph too, but this is the one I'm going to key on. But I did have other ones, the Battle of Lexington and Concord, which wasn't specifically stated. But you also have things like the Sons of Liberty. Any of those things, guys, would probably garner a point because they are tied into your argument, and it's not just a passerby statement. All right, here we go. This is, again, my evidence point. One of these intrusive acts was part of the intolerable acts levied after the Boston Tea Party. It was known as the Quartering Act, and it allowed British soldiers to come into their homes and even eat their food whenever they would see fit. So there's my piece of evidence there. Again, bringing in the Quartering Act, which eventually even will become a part of the Bill of Rights. And really and this is something just thinking ahead, guys, in that concluding paragraph, if you want to make an attempt at synthesis, you could do it with the idea of the Bill of Rights and what happened to the colonists and the complaints that they made in the Declaration of Independence became the Bill of Rights of the Constitution and the founding of our second form of government, remember, the Constitution. So that's where you want to, I guess, you could drive that point home, and it'd be a really nice tie-in. But this is my last sentence leading into my concluding paragraph. It was eventually intrusive actions by British soldiers like the aforementioned that led Americans down the road to revolution. So just tying that in, again, the increased tensions, how this is going to really be the cause ultimately in the end that will spring the Americans towards revolution. So go through yours, compare it to what I have, fill out the Google form, and just simply state what changes you would make and why. And that's it for today, guys. You guys have a great day. We will see you tomorrow.